14th episode of your favorite international TV show, Russia Under Sanctions, is on the way with elderly dictator starring. Learn the details in our wrap-up today. Criminals in the army make the army criminal. In time, Russia will have it all back at itself. 4 hours of shooting, dead and injured people, a Jewish synagogue burned to the ground. News from Russian Dagestan. Good afternoon. All these topics in more detail in today's daily wrap-up on UATV English with me, Henry Keane, as usual, doing my best to break the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. European Council agreed the 14th package of sanctions against Russia in response to Russia's criminal war of aggression against Ukraine, announces Belgian presidency of the EU Council. They say the package is powerful and significant. I wonder if anyone has ever heard Brussels saying otherwise, like answering the question on their political work. Did the EU Council ever estimate it as weak and non-significant? So it's this time. I quote, "This package includes new targeted measures and maximizes the impact of existing sanctions by closing loopholes." In turn, Reuters informs us that officials from 27 EU countries have been discussing this new package for more than a month, looking for loopholes they can then close. I suppose the new measures include a ban on the transshipment of Russian LNG, liquefied natural gas, as well as a plan to hold EU operators responsible for helping Russia to circumvent the sanctions by means of subsidiaries and partners in third countries. Glad to hear it, even though it never happened. Approval of the package was blocked by Germany. Berlin's hesitation was partly due to internal differences between the German Foreign Ministry and the Chancellor's office, as per Reuters. That's okay. Germany will be there. Just give it some time, will you? After all, they started with donating helmets to Ukraine, remember? And look where they are now. Leopard tanks. Some of them even on the move. So Germans will stand for Ukraine. Solidarity, human values, no doubt about it. Just don't be so pushy. Give Germans a year or two to sort out economic values and then get back to human ones. Journalist Rikard Josviak clarifies the matter by saying that the controversial issue concerned, I quote Josviak, the clause about the absence of Russia, for whatever that hard truth means. And in easy terms, that could have meant that exporters and suppliers from the EU would have been obliged to include in certain sales contracts appropriate wording that prohibits the re-export of restricted goods to Russia. This clause was already included in the 12th package of sanctions, and in the 14th, it was planned to expand the pressing onto European companies' subsidiaries in third countries. But the clause was deleted in the compromise text.
There is no observer status in Europe anymore to Russia's aggression. We are all victims of Russia's aggression, and therefore it is crucial that we keep on aiding Ukraine, because Russia only understands power. And I'm happy with the steps taken just recently, also with the use of Russian frozen assets, and especially those who, well, at this take the proceeds from those. I appreciate the 14th sanctions package, and also the steps we are going to take to make the use of the shadow fleet by Russia impossible in the Baltic Sea region.
The 14th package is powerful indeed. The new sanctions package also includes restrictions on a number of Russian venomous propaganda media like RIA Novosti, Izvestia, Ruskaya Gazeta, as well as the new edition of Voice of Europe, which is attributed to ex-Ukrainian Kremlin oligarch Viktor Medvedchuk. Well, what can I say? But to wonder, how many are there? I mean, how many more sanction packages the world needs to understand the hard truth in easy terms? The faster it cuts all ties with Putin's Russia, the faster new, legit for trade and business Russia without Putin starts to emerge. Reaction equals action. This is the law not only of physics but also of geopolitics. If you conscript thugs and murderers into your army to be sent for a war abroad, it is only a question of when you get an army of thugs and murderers returning back home. Whichever side you're at, ask yourself one question: what do you think happens when the war is over and your army of thugs returns home? A wave of crimes awaits Russia when the war against Ukraine ends, promises Bloomberg. Isn't it strange? When Russia sent its conscripts to invade Ukraine, the country's crime rate dropped shortly after. I wonder why is that? Who were these brave Russian heroes sent to Ukraine by the Kremlin? And what, when and if they return, they cause a new wave of crimes in Russia, journalists note. And not only international Western journalists, as you might think. According to the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, the number of crimes committed by military personnel which are not related to the war increased by more than 20% last year in Russia. There has been a sharp increase in cases of violent crime as well as theft and drug-related crimes, and these figures do not even take into account the crimes involving tens of thousands of convicts released from prisons to participate in the war under a program created by the Wagner PMC. So their return is an early signal of what will happen when hundreds of thousands of men who have been away on the battlefield for a long time return to civilian life in Russia. Again, according to Bloomberg calculations based on data from the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, the number of sexual crimes against minors in the Russian Federation increased by 62% compared to the pre-war period.
The return of Wagner recruits to Russia came as a shock to the residents of towns and villages, who discovered that among them lived people who, as they thought, were serving long prison terms. Among those pardoned are people convicted of murder and even cannibalism. From the Bloomberg article.
Well, I'm shocked that residents of Russia are shocked by these news. They did not know. They expected something else, maybe from murderers, rapists and cannibals armed by the Kremlin and being granted a pardon in advance for whatever terrible deeds they do in Ukraine these days. What were the Russians expecting them to do after their return? Art? Ballet? Rocket science, maybe? Well, the law which made it possible to conscript inmates of Russian penitentiaries quietly abolished the right to pardon after 6 months of service, forcing criminals who joined the army to remain in it until the end of the war, like other draftees. Still, they often resort to desertion. According to the Russian Supreme Court, again, the number of crimes involving military personnel increased fourfold in 2023 to 4,409 compared to 2021. Russian human rights groups, those left there, estimate that a total of 175,000 ex-prisoners were conscripted and sent to Ukraine. The post-war spike in crime could cost Russia up to 0.6% of its GDP, according to Alexei Zakov, a Russian economist at Bloomberg Economics. In addition to the direct costs of life and property, the state will face higher costs of social protection and security, especially the police, he said. Well, Mr. Zakov might be stressing out any dreadful facts and figures. None of that have any influence on the Kremlin. Because the Kremlin counts money, and solely money, not any Russian lives. As simple as that. Gunmen opened fire on places of worship in 2 cities of Russia's southernmost, Dagestan province on Sunday, killing at least 15 police officers and 4 civilians, including an Orthodox priest, in what appeared to be a coordinated attack. Dagestan is home to a small Christian minority and even smaller Jewish population that appeared to be among the targets of Sunday's attack. Nighttime video shared by Republic of Dagestan's Ministry of Internal Affairs showed at least a dozen law enforcement officers who appeared to be armed and wearing tactical gear outside the gates of a cathedral in northwest Makhachkala. Sergei Melikov, head of the Dagestan Republic, said at least 6 militants were also killed following the attacks on churches, synagogues and police posts in the cities of Derbent and the regional capital Makhachkala, which are about 75 miles apart. The attacks took place in the Republic of Dagestan in the North Caucasus, a predominantly Muslim region on the Caspian Sea that has a history of separatist and militant violence. The turbulence in the region has been further fanned by Russia's war in Ukraine as ethnic minorities living in Russia have been disproportionately mobilized to fight. Two things to mention here. First, a Muslim security person who was guarding Jewish synagogue was killed. Again, Muslim guard of Jewish synagogue. Well, ain't that a beautiful example of what real faith is in comparison with a fundamentalism? And last but not least, following the Crocus City Hall attack in Moscow, Russian Tsar Putin had insisted that, I quote, his usurped Soviet Majesty, Russia cannot be target of terrorist attacks by Islamic fundamentalists because it demonstrates a unique example of interfaith harmony and interreligious and interethnic unity. Full stop here. Well, that concludes today's video. Thank you so very much for watching. Please stay updated. Comment, like and subscribe to UATV English channel for more news from Ukraine directly. Your support really matters. Thank you. Goodbye.